Thank you very much for the kind introduction. I'm delighted to be here presenting the multi-omics, or chairing the multi-omics session for UK Biobank today. Can I have my first slide, please? So first of all, I'm just going to introduce a little bit about, what do we mean by multi-omics in UK Biobank and where are we now? And those of you in the audience obviously will know an awful lot about this already because you'll be looking through this data on a regular basis and using it for your research, but really just to provide a summary. The richness of this data is really incredible. So far, complete on all 500,000 participants, we've listed at the top a whole series of assays which have been done, some recently and some a number of years ago. And really, this doesn't even begin to convey the sheer number of assays that have been performed. For example, under biochemistry, there are many, many, many different analyses that have been performed and numbers that are available, all seen online. So first of all, complete, we have got a large amount of measures there, and then further down, we've listed sort of the ongoing measures that are being undergone at the moment. For example, O-link proteomics on over 54,000 samples, which is complete, and Chris Whelan is going to speak about that, our first speaker. There's also an infectious diseases pilot on 10,000, which is complete, and another 50,000 about to start. Charlotte Warren-Gash is going to speak about that. And then we've got a number of imaging studies already underway, some complete, some including Dementia Platform UK, others funded by MRC, Calico and the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative, including repeated imaging scans on large numbers of people, which will allow UK Biobank to look at this in a longitudinal way, which is extremely important as we move towards sort of aging and looking at diseases over the life course. We've also got NMR metabolomics being done by Nightingale, which will be complete by the second half of 2023. And Heli Julkinen from Nightingale is one of our speakers in this session who's going to talk about this. And then last, a transcriptomics single-cell pilot study being funded by Chan Zuckerberg Initiative with Sanger, which is about to start now. Next slide, please. So I guess one thing that I wanted to sort of pose a few, maybe have a short discussion, and in our panel discussion we can cover this a lot more, is like, where do we go next with this, and what new opportunities should we be thinking about for UK Biobank? And I'd really like to also open this up to the audience and ask you all to come to us with new suggestions of things we could consider that would be important. And just sort of to start this ball rolling, I've listed a few at the top that I think are worth thinking about, and maybe thinking about a clinical biochemistry refresh. A number of years ago, there was a large amount of data collected on clinical biochemistry, both in plasma and serum. But of course, remembering that we do have urine and saliva stored for Biobank. And on top of that, since that time, a number of new assays have sort of come on stream that are either near or maybe are already at clinical use. And so that means that we can get high quality quantitative data for these, and particularly things that I thought of, maybe metabolites relevant to lysosomal storage and trafficking and function disorders. And really why this is interesting is that these disorders, although they're detected with newborn screening in early childhood, they are associated with higher levels of toxic endogenous molecules, such as ceramides and sphingolipids. And those of you working on cardiovascular disease will undoubtedly know that alterations in sphingolipids is now, from large-scale population studies, being seen to be associated with cardiovascular disease. So we've got these assays in newborn screening that are measuring metabolites that we know are toxic, and maybe we need to be thinking about what might be happening with some of these metabolites over time when the assays are already available. But there's a number of other things. There were ones that are kind of, obviously very important, like B12, folate, thyroid function tests, would be really relevant as we look at longitudinal disease development. And it would be good to go back and think about including them now and how that might be done. And also metal ion measurements, looking at heavy metals. ICP mass spectrometry is already used in the NHS, so this wouldn't be technically difficult to do. So these are things that are already measured using quantitative mass spec, some already in the NHS as part of newborn screening and other platforms. And then we come to the big data omics mass spectrometry methods. We already mentioned about proteomics. So O-link proteomics is being done now, but O-link proteomics is a very targeted method that is looking at defined and known proteins. When we talk about big data omics mass spectrometry, we're really thinking about the untargeted methods, the ones where you do huge amounts of screening and you get data that could find hidden things that you're not really looking for. Now, these are really powerful methods, and there's ongoing discussions about how they might be brought to bear on Biobank, and I think these are really important discussions, but there are clearly challenges, and so discussions will continue about this. Epigenetics, Wolf Reich is going to speak about that in his talk. And then imaging, there's another proposal to add to the 100,000 imaging, but more repeat assessments of surviving participants to allow relevance of changes over time for development of health outcomes to be measured. So there's lots of kind of interesting things sort of popping out, but, you know, more ideas, particularly from yourselves, would be very welcome. You know, ideas about assays that are already online, on stream, and how they could be applied to this cohort would be absolutely fantastic to hear your thoughts on. So last slide, please. So I just briefly want to introduce the participants today in our session. So what we're going to do is each speaker will come up and do their 10-minute talk, and we won't take questions then, but we will at the end have a panel discussion for 30 minutes, and we will take questions from the audience and cover your questions then. So keep your questions till the end. So our first speaker is Chris Whelan from Janssen. Chris is Director of Neurosciences Data Science at Johnson & Johnson. He's a neuroscientist and geneticist who's worked at USC, Pfizer and Biogen. During his time at Biogen, he co-founded and chaired the UK Biobank Pharma Proteomics project, which he still leads, and that's what he's going to speak about today. He has published I think this is over here. Oops. Okay, great. Right, we've got a slide on each one. I was going to point out on my slide his preprint. There is a preprint online on bioRxiv on the work that they've been doing on this area, and no doubt he'll be talking about this in his talk. Our second speaker is Heli Julkinen, who's a senior data scientist at Nightingale Health, the Finnish developer of an NMR metabolomics platform for large cohorts, biobanks and trials. She has led studies on biomarker discovery and risk prediction using the UK Biobank Nightingale data already, and she's going to be covering this. Charlotte Warren-Gash from the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine is Associate Professor of Epidemiology and Honorary Consultant in Public Health, where she leads a research programme on infections and brain health supported by a Wellcome Career Development Award. And then our final speaker is Wolf Reich, who's a professor of an epigeneticist interested in epigenetic reprogramming in development and aging, and he's currently director of Altos Labs at Cambridge Institute of Science. And joining me on the panel today is also Charlotte Relton, who is a professor of epigenetic epidemiology at the MRC Integrated Epidemiology Unit at the University of Bristol. And Charlotte is also director of Population Health Sciences Institute. So I think I've spoken enough. I'm delighted to introduce our first speaker, Chris Whelan from Janssen. So if you would like to come up, Chris.